Good morning, YouTube! Welcome, everyone. This is Griever here, bringing you guys episode 3 of Bleach. Episode review. This episode actually got me a bit in the feels. I never really fully cared for Orihime or Chad because I felt that their stories weren't nearly as impactful to the overall arc. Not that every single character needs to be integral to saving the world and have a destiny and be the chosen one. I usually hate that whole chosen one trope. But when I first read or first watched the anime of Bleach, Orihime's backstory and her powers it was like, okay, yeah, it's supposed to be sad, whatever. But now, after watching episode 2 and now watching which episode 3 completely deals with Orihime. The second half of the last episode was all about Orihime and her brother, and now this whole episode was all about them. And it took its time. The pacing was good, and just the feels were there for this one. Once again, this is very early Bleach, but it seems to me it might have been helpful for Rukia to also mention that reaping souls with a Zanpakuto does not kill them. Because that is why Ichigo hesitated after the first bout with Sora, with Orihime's brother. Instead, Rukia explains that they were once human and now they're monsters and they can never go back. Ichigo has mixed feelings about that. Had Rukia simply said, now for the sake of drama, I understand, but had Rukia, while in the bedroom, had simply said, yeah, but don't worry about it because when you're not actually destroying a hollow, which is something that'll be brought up later, is what the Quincy's do, and that's a serious, like they think themselves so self-righteous, but my God, no, they are not. At the very least, the Soul Reapers, the Shinigami, their Zanpakuto cleanses the sins of the hollow and allows the actual soul that once was to then go on to the afterlife, to go on to the soul society. So, like, I fail to understand why she would risk Orihime's life and Ichigo's life in this entire bout and only tell him there at the end, because he had multiple opportunities to, let's take out Sora, and hesitated due to that he was unaware of this information. Once he knows about this, like, what's the problem with cleansing or reaping hollows? Ichigo is then saving them. Because this episode, when I was watching it, and I was getting caught up in the feels, and I was really like, okay, Orihime, like Sora, I feel really bad for this. This is actually pretty tragic, and especially where it's double layered. Not only did Sora initially blame it on the loneliness that he felt because Orihime had tended to forget him and seemed to not pray for him anymore. But the fact of the matter is that even in this state, doesn't blame her for the real reason. The real reason, it's like a layered tragedy, because though he blames it on that act, it's not the true act, and he knows it, but he kind of holds back because he's not. Orihime figures it out and says, I know why. It's because I didn't want to be lonely. So I asked you to stay. I cried for you to stay when you were on your deathbed. And that's why you lingered around, to keep me from being all alone. And then you were tied to it based on that one emotion. You were tied to this world. And now, when I started to realize it was selfish of me after I had not gotten over you, but I realized how selfish I was being towards you, and I knew that you couldn't rest in peace, I made sure to go out there and be proactive and make something of my life and be happy for the both of us. That way you wouldn't have to watch over me anymore. I didn't realize that this would have a negative effect on your soul because of the wish she had on his deathbed. Really, once again, maybe I like to think that I was a pretty in-tune teenager, but maybe I just fully didn't get it at the time. Maybe I wasn't paying enough attention, but this was a pretty good backstory. This was pretty good for in the feels. I'm not saying I was weeping or anything, but a really good episode. It really had, and I have to mention one thing before I forget. I even wrote it down so I wouldn't forget. Ichigo. calling Sora, hey, Captain Overbite. I mean, with the double layer of teeth and everything. Like, it was funny. I gotta say, that broke the tension a little bit, but it's so within Ichigo's character to be like, hey, numbnuts. You know? Like, just to call somebody out on their shit. Like, oh, this is a really serious situation. And he's like, all right, dickhead. You know, sort of idea. Once again, I already made the comparison in an earlier review to Oga from Beelzebub. Always calling people, hey, you little bitch. You know, and stuff like that. Very similar here with Ichigo, in the sense that he just calls people out on their shit. Edward Elric, reminiscent too, with always calling people a novice, you know. So, but in this sense, it was so unexpected. Captain Overbite, like he didn't call him, hey, you bastard, or something like that, something generic. He literally called him Captain Overbite, and it broke the tension a little bit, but in the funniest of ways, because it's meant to be taken seriously, and it is, but it was actually quite funny. I found it pretty funny. So this whole episode deals with that. So this will be a really short review. It's simply Orihime and her story, and the story about her hairpin, how her brother bought it for her, and the very last day. Once again, the regret that stems from this, the regret you feel when you get into a fight with your wife or your girlfriend or your family or something, and that person goes and dies in a car wreck, and that was the last words you said to them. That level of regret, I can't imagine that level of regret people have, knowing that in the end of the day, it doesn't matter, but it does matter to them, and it's a fine line you can walk there. And of course, this is, once again, now we're on to the triple layer of issues with Orihime's sadness of her backstory, is that he, even though she stopped praying, he bought her that hairpin and she didn't like it. But she has never stopped wearing it since he died. And wants to say the final words that instead of telling him that she didn't like it, she wanted to say, have a good day, like have a nice day at work, And she finally got to say those words. And this actually is interesting. The anime brings it up once again, this whole overarching storyline where there's one soul, there's one hollow that's specifically after Ichigo sort of idea, and we know it to be Grand Fisher by the silhouette. Grand Fisher is after in this whole overarching thing. Don't believe that was in the manga, but here it works fine. But I like the idea that because I guess Sora was a new hollow, they give an explanation in the anime that I'm just kind of like meh about, because the similar thing I remember happened in the manga where Sora still had some of his mind, some of his inner thoughts. So the soul is still there. Once again, Zanpakuto cutting down a hollow wouldn't necessarily, if it's supposed to cleanse a soul, there still has to be a human soul with the memories and the feelings and stuff within the hollow. It's just nearly impossible to reach. In this way, I do like the fact that Sora is clearly a very new hollow, and still had, I guess it's one of those things where you're slowly taken over, slowly but surely, and it fills you to the point that I'm sure a hollow like Fishbone D could never have come back until being reaped, or, I guess something like Grand Fisher or any of these other hollows, but where Sora was fresh and new and hadn't destroyed the last link that he had to the human world in the form of Orihime, his sister. I kind of like this, It was very poetic. It was really nice. I really enjoyed the episode. Moving on to the next episode, I believe this is where we follow Chad in the next episode. Not sure. Or does Kon and Kisuke have to be introduced here soon? So I think that's in the next couple of episodes. So I forget which one comes first, chicken and the egg sort of idea. But let's table it for now. This was episode 3. Like, comment, subscribe. I hope you guys enjoyed. I really had a better than the last episode. I really enjoyed this one, and it just makes me want to watch more Bleach. So thanks guys for watching. We'll see you back here next time for episode 4.